to Demming Chronicles, where we chat with persons whose ideas and opinions are different. We do that because we believe that changing behavior requires that we change a conversation. On this week's program, we have Professor Selwyn Cudjoe and George Singh. We'll be back with you shortly. Demming Chronicles. Welcome back, Demming Chronicles. And on this week's program, we begin with Dr. Selwyn Cudjoe. And I want to start off right away with a comment you made in the lead up to the 2020 general elections, when you said that you were supporting the UNC. Well, we know that you're a PNM. Has this statement of support changed?
No, it was a specific event at a particular historical time. So I still remain a member of the People's National Movement.
All right, so you're still a member. You know, and I reflected on a statement that David Rudder made in one of his calypsos, where he said, "How we vote is not how we party." Could you give me some of your reflections on that statement?
It sounds paradoxical. I don't know what I mean. If it means that we have friends all over a small island, we grow up with people, etc. In fact, I'm communicating now. I've got a friend called it's very interesting. I have a friend called Michael Kangley. Went to school together, played together, ate together, etc. Then he goes to, of course, when in 1957 or so, when the PNM comes in the States, he automatically goes to it was probably DLP at the time. I go to PNM. And now we've been communicating. So you have friends all over and we talk. But I think in terms of our political views, I'm sure they change. So if it means that, of course, you have friends all over, but you vote in a different kind of way, I think that remains true.
I think he was specifically referring to the tribal voting that we tend to...
I see. I don't accept this nonsense of tribal voting. I mean, you look at the last United States elections under Biden, Black folks voted for the Democratic Party, which they've done for the longest while because they believe the Democratic Party to be acting in their own best interest. And if it is that Black people believe that the PNM is acting in their own interest, I think that doesn't make it tribal. It simply means that their choice is based on either the performance or what they see in the PNM. I think it must remember that the PNM has always been a nationalist party. And nationalism, it seems to me, is more confined to the cities, where in terms of rural areas, the UNC and so on have always been confined to rural areas, and their votes are quite different. So I don't think it's a tribal voting. I think people vote on their own best interests. So I'll never accept that thing of tribal voting. And everybody votes tribally. The Democrat, the Blacks in this country, United States of America, from after the Civil War of '65 until about Eisenhower, they all voted solely for the Republican Party because Lincoln had set the slaves free. After that, they have all voted for the Democratic Party. I don't know that's tribalism because they believe, and you look at the spate of legislations that's been passed in 40 states right now to prevent the Blacks from voting, and you realize that the Republican Party is not in their interest. They're not voting tribally, they're voting in their own best self-interest. So Black folks in Trinidad, now that's also a very tricky thing. You might think that you're voting your own best self-interest, but again, because of ideological barriers and blinders, what you think may be in your own best self-interest is not in your own best self-interest. And you started by saying, I said I will support the UNC because I think that PNM needed the shock to recognize that they do not respond to the interests of their major constituents. And that's what I did. And, I still think that they're failed Black people.
Yeah. But I just want to talk a little about the way we vote, because when you look at, for instance, the last general elections, there's a coincidence of the way the country is populated in terms of race and the voting. So the Northwest, the Northeast was very much PNM, Central and South was very much UNC. And that to me might be an indication of tribal voting. But you seem to... I
don't know why you like that word tribal voting. People vote in their own best self-interest. If you want to call it, I don't think it's tribal in the sense that I don't know Blacks are a tribe. I mean, Lloyd Best says it's about 9 tribes or 15 tribes. So I think that's much too easy. I think it's, put it another way, maybe it's much more complex than that. And when people vote, they got multiple kinds of multiple kinds of interest. But I think that people have voted for the PNM. Certainly I have, from started when Larry Nicholas Constantine in Tunapuna in 1956 to the present time, supported the PNM, I think, in part because of how things worked out in my terms and our own racial origins. When we decided to support the PNM, that we was nowhere of, I did it because my parents were doing it, and that's how we all start. But as I grew older and I began to make my own choices, I thought in terms of organization of the economy, what the PNM had done, the kinds of plans to build, etc., that they were by far a superior party. And so I worked with the PNM because I felt it was a superior party. That's why when I decided I will not support them in that election, of course, it was based not on race. It was based on what I thought was in the best interest. Now here I become very parochial. I think that primarily, I mean, we have multiple identities. I feel that in terms of the PNM were voting and Black folks came together and gave their lifeblood. And then when they passed all the jobs and the contracts and so on, that somehow we remained at the bottom. And I must say, I think we are still sinking, sinking, and sinking, and sinking. I don't see any way out.
You don't see a way out.
Well, not through the present system. I don't think the present leadership of the People's National Movement are not, in terms of working to enhance the status of the Black people.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough money to give.
And what are your thoughts on the view that it's not really about the party, but that Afro Trinidadians have been given equal opportunities and we've just not utilized it? So it is the fault of the Afro.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense.
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow you to just say it's nonsense. Why do you say it's nonsense?
Well, I mean, the question of equal, I don't really mean by equal opportunity, is that if you look at how, who has the major contracts? You look at the roads, you look at the prisons, you look at a certain group has the major and continue to get it. I wrote about it about a year ago when, of course, there were 33 positions in the oil fields under Mr. Khan. And of the 33, I think of the 35 or 33, all went to East Indians. And now they will certainly control the oil industry. How do you, in a country like ours, have 33 scholarships to give, and you give it all to East Indians? What about opportunity? It has nothing to do with opportunity. It has a certain favoritism. Who get the major contracts? Not Black people. I mean, I can't see any Black folk. I mean, look at even your parliament. Look at your top 5 leaders of the People's National Movement. Start with Young and Alwari and Imbridge and all them fellas. What equal opportunity are you talking about? And then look at their spouses and who get the jobs. There's no equal opportunity there. They're favored. They're favored. So that's not equal opportunity. And even though it were so, at the end of the day, you deal on the evidence. If you see that the group or one group, and as I always give before this plague and coronavirus, I always give the example. If there was a virus or a plague in Caroni, then we'd have to stop everything that we're doing and go and try to get that part of the population fixed because they're an integral part. If it is, as I said, Blacks are going down and down and down and down, you stop whatever you're doing. And I give the example that the amount of money to spend on that road from where to up to Toko and billions of dollars. When in terms of the educational facilities, look at the education facilities, those kinds of schools that Black kids are going to. I just read an article this morning, I think in the Financial Times, about the importance of education for the children, for the youth. I read in James Baldwin, I think, No Name in the Street. And you have the same notion that you got to deal with the youth. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of this nonsense about equal opportunity. That's silly. That's stupid.
All right. So you've debunked the equal opportunity argument. You've debunked the tribal argument. So and I'll accept that. You raise the issue of the pandemic. What are your views on how this pandemic is being handled?
I think the PNM did a very good job in terms of controlling it, and they were quick to act in terms of quarantines and keeping force. So I think they did a very good job. But what I left Trinidad 2 or 3 days, the Wednesday, I think the 16th, I was there. I had to go on a trip to India. I was invited by the Indian government to do some a scholarly trip there. We called it off because we saw the coronavirus. And I have not been able to get back home. Now, what do I do? Do I die in this country? Yeah. So even though they started by doing a good job, in terms of the reopening it, I think it should be much more systematic in terms of we should know, for example, that I should know that within a month or 2 or 3, we will proceed in this way. By virtue of my being a citizen, I should be able to come home, of course, following certain protocols. That's why I've not applied for anything, because I don't want any favor. I mean, there aren't going to be any favors anyhow. But I just think that at this point, we need to be much more systematic and recognize that Mr. Young, I don't know who he is in the sense I've met him once, they don't have any fiat over our lives. It's not a question of, what makes you the boss and I've got the power. It's only about power and force. It's not about democracy and democratizing the process and knowing what to expect. So I should be able to comfortably say, if we reach X point in terms of, cases, etc., those who are vaccinated, etc., that I could reasonably hope to plan my life to be back in my country. And I think in that sense, we have not been doing such a very, it turns out to be a lot, somewhat favoritism. I don't know. I understand the prime minister's daughter and her friends were there, and Al-Wari's son was there, and so on. I mean, equal opportunity. Just about equal opportunity. Let the playing field. It doesn't work that way. It works that people favor their own and act in the interest of their own.
Dr. Cudjoe, thank you very much for being part of Demming Chronicles. And before we end this interview, are there any other comments you wish to make?
No, I just think we have a lot of work to do. I think as a society, we have a lot of work to do. I think I was reading Mr. Imbert's statement this morning or yesterday about the strength of the economy. I suspect that I will wait and see what is happening. But I think that we've got a lot of work to do. And I think that in terms of the central issue that the country deals with has to be the role of Black folk, what they're doing about Black folk and our Black children or Black areas, that I think that if one group degenerates, was allowed to be given equal opportunity, but nothing happens, we shall just fall into an abyss, and we got to be very careful about that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Selwyn Cudjoe. Demming Chronicles. We'll be back with you shortly.
Right. Thank you.
Demming Chronicles Season 2. Welcome back. And on this segment, we have George Singh. I know George to be a producer of excellent shows, Southex, and really to be part of that creative sector. George, how has COVID impacted your business?
So, hi, Denise. It's great to be on your show. Hi to all your viewers. COVID has definitely had an impact on our business. You would know that we are in the entertainment business, not only the entertainment business, but the corporate event business. And that sector has been almost on a complete shutdown since March last year. Actually, it's still on a complete shutdown, apart from small things that we've been able to do in the virtual market. I think, however, even though there has been a shutdown, it has given us the opportunity to look for new opportunities within that virtual sphere, where we can create probably some sort of revenue streams, even within the market that we're working with.
Without sharing your secrets, what are those opportunities that you have managed to capitalize on?
So one of the first things that we explored, well, first of all, just before the shutdown, funny enough, we started working on virtual trade shows. Virtual trade shows is something that has been around for some time, but people were not really paying attention to it. When the shutdown came in March, there was an aggressive move towards, the movement towards virtual trade shows started, and we started exploring possibilities with foreign providers, looking at the opportunities that they were providing us to be able to create a platform for local producers that wanted to do trade shows. As you would know, we are one of the largest providers of infrastructure for the conference market. So that when someone thinks about doing a conference, they come to Southex. So we thought, it would be a nice fit for us to get involved in the virtual trade show, because if you, Denise Demming, are thinking of doing a trade show, you would think, okay, let's go to George and see what George has. So we wanted to have that opportunity to have something in that virtual market. What we found, however, was that the foreign providers that we were going to were quite expensive. So that we had events, virtual events, if we were dealing with a foreign provider, was starting in the vicinity of 30 to 40,000 US dollars. So it was not something that was feasible for the local market. So basically what we started doing at that point, and this is way back in March I'm talking about now, we took the templates that the foreigners were using, and we started creating a local template for virtual trade shows, which is still in the making. However, let me take you down a little way down the year. Diwali Nagar is something that we have been involved in for the last 3 or 4 years. So when that was coming up, I went to the NCIC and I said, listen guys, I know that you all are not doing the Diwali Nagar this year, but why not think about doing it virtually? You know, so we sat down around the table, we had a discussion, and we did decide to do a virtual Diwali Nagar, which was actually quite successful. What they did is we did parts of it live, and we did parts of it using footage from past years, and we actually streamed to live audiences that gave us a nice format. So that was something that was an opportunity. Also with Carnival, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what was the kind of uptake on that? Because that sounds like something that could be very exciting for the diaspora.
Very exciting. And actually, the diaspora has become, you know, a lot of people talk about the diaspora, and with regards to Carnival in particular, you know, when Trinidadians talk about Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago, and you're doing a show in Trinidad and a lot of people have not been paying attention to the diaspora. That Caribbean element that is outside there, that is 20 or 30 or 40 or maybe even 100 times bigger than the viewership in Trinidad. And COVID, I have to say, created an opportunity for us to really explore that diaspora market. And that is exactly what happened with Carnival. Because when Dr. Rowley announced that he was canceling Carnival in I think it was somewhere around August, right? Immediately, Denise, immediately, you know, a lot of people started crying, oh gosh, no Carnival, blah, blah, blah. We looked at it as an opportunity to create something for Chutney Soca Monarch, which is one of our key events. We looked at it as an opportunity to create something that was different, to create something that we've been talking about for many years, and to go after a market that was much larger than the market that we were normally going to. And we were able to hit all our points, Denise. And I mean, I can share some of those analytics with you later on if you want.
Yeah. I just find it a very exciting opportunity that COVID is bringing us, because we have quite a large diaspora and they are longing for connection with home. So once we have good quality productions, then I see that as a tremendous opportunity. But let's just talk a little more about the enabling environment. What do you think is necessary for creatives to thrive in Trinidad and Tobago?
Thrive under COVID or thrive normally?
Thrive in general, because my perspective of COVID is that in another 2 years, life will be different and we would have learned how to manage COVID. So how does that creative sector thrive in the future?
Okay, so there are two, before I answer that question, right? There are two things that I just want to share with you that I thought was very interesting coming out of Chutney Soca Monarch. And I'll use Chutney Soca Monarch as an example because it just ended. The two things that really stood out with us when we did the analytics of Chutney Soca Monarch was that our biggest audience, now we reached actually 3.9 million people in 30 days, the first 30 days, right, of the show being online, which is a phenomenal amount of people. I would have never expected that we would have reached, that was nowhere in my radar, for example, right? So when I saw those numbers coming back to us, I was totally overwhelmed. Now we didn't charge anybody, so it was totally free. And that's a whole other discussion, right? But one of the interesting things about that figure was that 29.7% of the people, of that 3.9 million people, were located in the US. And that percentage of people was actually larger than Trinidad and Tobago. So yes. Trinidad and Tobago ran second, right? to the US. So the biggest market, our biggest market is actually the US, Canada, Guyana, and those Caribbean islands that are around us. So that's just an interesting phenomenon, right? To answer your question, I think that there are 4 things that we have to pay attention to in doing any event, and when you're talking about creatives, and it's probably one of the biggest, it's probably 4 of the biggest challenges that people in the creative sector face. One is sponsorship, which is a big thing. You know, and a lot of people don't think about sponsorship because they think, okay, they're doing an event, okay, we're gonna sell 700 tickets, we have to price these tickets at $300, we're gonna collect 21, how much ever that comes up to, right? And we have to make have all our expenses under that. Oh gosh, we're not going to make money, we're going to lose money, blah blah blah. Sponsorship is a key element in doing any event, and with us, we approach sponsorship in a way that sponsors should pay for your event before you even start. And sponsors, I would say, is divided into 2 areas. I would say corporate sponsorship, one, very importantly. And depending on what the creative element is in the event that you're bringing forward to the table, I would say government has a role to play. Now, a lot of people don't believe government should play a role in the creative sector, and I disagree with that 150%. Government has a critical role to play in the creative sector because they are, the creative sector, as a matter of fact, is doing the government's work in promoting Trinidad and Tobago. Right? So I think corporate government is very important. Patronage by people, you know, Trinidadians, unfortunately, don't like to pay for local culture, Dennis.
I want to stick a pin there. Here's a pin I want to stick. That we have grown up with culture being made very available and almost free. So I don't think it is that people don't want to pay. I think you know, they've grown accustomed to not paying. When they have to pay, it becomes a problem. So that's just, I think we're going to get over that.
So that's great. And I'm glad you said that, right? Because one of the things in our lead up to Carnival, a lot of people came to me and they said, George, you have a great product. Let's do pay-per-view, right? And you'll get people to pay for the show and you'll make money. And I said to them, absolutely not. I'm not interested, right? Because why am I going to do a show pay-per-view and only have 3 or 4 or 500 people looking at the show when I got 3.9 million people looking at it? So what you have to take now is you have to take that particular figure, 3.9 million. You show your corporate sponsor the analytics. Okay, you got 29% of this is from Trinidad, 29% from New York or wherever it is, right? And get them to pay for your show. And that's where the sponsorship is a key factor. So you get your sponsors to pay. So really and truly, the corporate sponsors, government sponsors, your public patronage, which is still important, right? And also the other thing in the creative sector that is also an issue is your artist buy-in. So for example, a lot of people don't think about that, right? But if your artists are not motivated or convinced that what you are doing is something that is in their interest, they're not going to support it. And I mean, you need to get the support of the artistic community.
I'm going to stick another pin there, George. My observation of artists is that they expect you to bring the audience and they will come and perform. So I do not see our artists spending a lot of investing of their time into growing their own audiences.
So let me ask you a question, Dennis. Do you agree with that?
With what? Them not growing their audience?
Yeah, but
I think as an artist, you have to promote your own product as well. So
you have to be part of it. You have to be part of it. And that is one of the things that I think it's one of the things that has made our organization a successful one, right? In terms of how we deal with artists. From the very beginning, I engage artists. So when I come up with an idea to do something, and in particular with Chutney Soca Monarch, I'll use again as another example, I bring all our artists into meetings. I chat with them. I listen to what they want. I listen to their problems. Sometimes an artist would call me during COVID, Denise. You would not believe how many artists called me. I'm depressed, suffering from anxiety. This, I have no money. I have this and that. And you know, I would put down my whatever I'm doing. I would sit and chat with them and try to motivate them and bring them into under our umbrella. And I think that they feel very comfortable. I think they trust me. They trust that I know what I'm doing, and they support what I'm doing. And that support is critical to the success of everything that we do, because they are part and party. They are party to the success of any project that I'm involved in.
So you talked about 4 things. You talked about the sponsorship or partnerships. You talk about the artists. What are the other 2 things that you think we need?
The other 2 things that I talked about, well, sponsorship I broke up into 2, which is corporate and government.
Yes.
Right. So those are 2. The public support is the other thing. The public support. Public has to support what you're doing. So and that I guess comes under marketing. If you market your product properly, you get the public to support it. You know, so that is those are the 4 things that I've identified as very critical.
And as we bring this interview to a close, George, what are your parting comments? What is your advice for people who are just people who've said they have made no money and they don't know their next step?
That's a hard question, Denise. What I would say is to stay focused, remain positive, continue to do what you do, and believe in what you do. Because, you know, one of the things is you have to believe in what you do, and you have to really believe that what you're doing is going to be successful. COVID will end, right? It will eventually go into the background. I don't think it will ever disappear. It will always probably be a factor. But I think it will come to an end at some point, and we will go back to some level of normalcy. The thing is getting people to survive to that point, which I think is very critical. And not only survive financially, but survive mentally, because this thing has had a mental effect on a lot of people. You know, it has really affected people in a big way. So I hope that people pray. I want to ask people to pray and to remain positive and to remain focused.
And on that note, we bring this edition of Demming Chronicles to a close. Wonderful interview with George Singh. George Singh has talked about a diaspora of 3.9 million pairs of eyeballs on his Chutney Soca program. That is certainly a learning for all of us. Demming Chronicles, thanks for viewing our program today. Like and share our program, and we'll be back with you. Follow us. Until then, be safe.